those board sweep decks. Just the thing like the JJ's lineup, for example, with all the wild pyromancers, are very good against the aggressive paladin, but they still just lose to the mid-range variant. But no, it is the chum version, so you're right. It is the full aggro.
Yeah,
so 6/1 drops, but it does extend out to Tyrion.
I was not sure if he was running the full-on aggro version, but I know that Zalae and RDU had very similar ideas coming into the event, and this is kind of what's been working for them. It worked a little bit less for Orange, who also brought a similar lineup, ended up winning his first match yesterday, 1-3 currently in the groups, which is not the position you want to be in. He just didn't find the right cards when he played his aggro decks. Zalae, though, in this case, picks up double Grimscale Chum, which can lead to blowouts. And I say can, because if it hits the right target, sometimes you just win on turn 1.
When you get the Mukla-sized Murloc War Leader, it's pretty good. But it's such a weird card because it just dies every time on turn 1 to a hero power in a deck that's trying to assemble a board. So I've seen people even cut the Grimscale Chum, and like Muzzy, for example, has been running double Hungry Crab instead of Grimscale Chum. So it doesn't have the Murloc synergy, but it has, favorable chances to land in a lot of matchups, as well as being a 1/2 body that can stick around for Blessing of Kings and whatnot. So it just helps you build up a board.
Yeah, and sometimes you can just eat you go Vilefin Inquisitor, 1/3, get a 1/1 on turn 2 because it kind of sucks, and then turn 3 you just get yourself a 3/4 and then an extra hero power. So you can always weave in those extra value plays with the Hungry Crab. That's interesting. I don't really consider that in the aggro list.
Right, you try and you build up a board that plays around, the pings from Mage or the daggers from Rogue and what have you. But here, do you just drop another Chum to die, or do you try and coin 3 into 3?
I like coin 3 into 3. You're only weak to... I mean, I'd even play the weaker one, because I don't think there's anything in Druid that...
Well, the fears are Feral Rage and Wrath at the moment.
Yeah, but that's
Wrath
the thing,
kills both of them and requires the 1/1 to trade in. Feral Rage kills both of them either way. So if you go with the weaker 3/3, the punish is sometimes their 1/1 gets to persist around, which isn't the scariest thing because Druid doesn't have good activations for minions that stick. They only have Earthen Scales, which oftentimes you don't care about.
Yeah, and this could be another one of those turns for Zalae if he picks up the right outcome. With the Grimscale Chum, can get himself the Bluegill to get a value trade into the 1/1. Alternatively, plays into Swipe, gives his opponent another Wrath if he has it, gives him a Feral Rage. And those are all tools that the Druid is very likely to be holding in that deck. And suddenly the 2 War Leaders are gone for Zalae, which are some of the swingiest cards that he can have to beat that Druid.
They're like the 2 most influential Murlocs in the deck. And now he's got another kind of 50-50 on Chum for the value trade. He hits it, so he has the value trade available to him if he wants it. The Swipe has been used, so 1 health minions are not that vulnerable.
You could play Hydrologist to get a secret redemption, get Getaway Kodo, get... yeah, those are pretty much the 2 ones you probably want the most, I'd say. Unless you want to waste their mana with Noble Sack. Is that ever a thing you do?
So what's the difference then? If you get Noble Sacrifice, your 2/1 gets to stick on the board and you don't have to replay it?
Yeah.
You take Getaway Kodo, your 2/1 leaves the board and you have to replay it. I think Zalae's comfortable at this point, spending 1 extra mana on the following turn. He doesn't really have a clear defined play yet. So I think I like the Getaway Kodo more than the Noble Sacrifice.
Interestingly, too, it means that if the opponent ends up playing one of his few 3-drops, which is effectively just Jade Blossom in the deck, aside from, Feral Rage and whatnot, you can get your Bluegill Warrior. If no other Murlocs come up to be buffed up, but the Grimscale Chum does giving you a value trade on the 2/2. So that's another thing that he might have considered going to that turn.
True Silver picked up is pretty solid. Might not even need to use the Bluegill. He can continue holding it for I guess he can king it later on.
Yeah, steed it, kings it, Megasaur it, do whatever you want with that Bluegill Warrior, but it can extract value. That's an important piece of...
Druid struggles at killing big minions, and if you create the biggest Bluegill the world has ever seen, that'll do well for you.
How big can you make a Bluegill, realistically? Like in a realistic game.
You could land Chum on it 4 times.
Oh man, that's a big Kings. That's an 8-attack Bluegill. Lines up pretty well against this dragon. Oh man.
He also has Sunkeeper plus the swing.
Yeah. I like the Sunkeeper. I think it's potentially better, but I'm just putting it out there. That's a huge Murloc.
That is big. And you have the Aldor to follow up, so if your opponent plays another big minion, like another Primordial Drake or something similar, you could just Aldor whatever they play and just smash it with King Bluegill.
King Bluegill. I like he's got a little bit of a crown on his head.
Just rocking it.
Yeah. So I feel like Sunkeeper might still be more appropriate, though, given the situation. You know, we're laughing about the big Murloc, but maybe Sunkeeper is just a better tempo play. Protects your Bluegill afterwards, so you can't really get Fel Raged into it, if that's a worry of yours. You'd be happy if they face tanked it, but it is better if it just sticks around. Clearly.
Okay.
Feels, you know, that's good enough.
So this way, he's not committing the kings, so he does not lose as much Sunkeeper Terran value if he has to use it on the following turn. So he's trying to keep as many options open as possible, while, you know, the upside is that. The downside is it makes his board a lot more vulnerable to removal. But he's already seen a Swipe and a Wrath and a Primordial Drake, so he thought, yeah, he's probably out of removal at that point. So,
lo and behold, there's the other 4/8 available, and that's probably the last cards that I wanted to see here. If I had to put, I mean,
it's
I guess
not that bad. He's got the Sunkeeper.
Sure, but it's
he can still deal with it.
I don't think there was a much worse case scenario. Like, I mean, I guess I have Black Paw's pretty awful. I have Black Paw plus Wrath, for instance, would have been much worse. But this 4/8 was something Zalae did not want to see this early. So, lucky for him, this is a pretty good King's target afterwards, which is give him a lot of lasting power. And that 3/7 is just not going to be shaken off the board.
Right. That's the most important thing on the King's minion against Druid is you want a high health total, and not much higher than 7 in the deck. Only like Ragnaros Lightlord maybe, but a lot of times they don't even run it. So this might be the highest health minion in this aggressive Paladin deck, so it's going to be the hardest thing to remove for the Druid, as they don't have like Mulch any longer, and nobody runs Naturalized.
Our Rage, not exactly what ShtanUdachi was hoping for. He wanted to cycle a little bit more, had another Innervate left, had another Wrath. A lot of plays were still left in the deck that let him go forward with this.
So in order to trade up, Zalae needs either the second True Silver Champion, a copy of Consecrate, or a copy of Kings. So he's kind of taking a little bit of a risk developing the gadget here, but there aren't too many ways Zalae can actually answer it. So it's not too bad.
Spiker's Steed would have been crazy good,
Spiker's
though.
Steed too, yeah.
Damn, that Spiker's Steed would look really sick right now as Zalae had been holding it, but
I think Kings is not bad. You waste a little damage, right? You gotta send 7 into a 5/5, but that's a pretty secure board. Having a 7/6 against Druid is no laughing matter.
Oh, Zalae is going wide on the board. Okay.
Yeah, he feels he needs more value to be able to close out this game. And he's not wrong. He's got only a Rockpool Hunter.
And to be fair, it's actually better if you get like Stonehill Defender into Tarim. It's like a marginal distinction, but games are won and lost on marginal distinctions at this point when you've got so little resources. well, marginal resources. Enough for me, man. Anybody said marginal resources?
That is, that's a whole heap of resources, and that is not.
What you got against my boy Tar Creeper, man?
He's like a very little non-Divine Shield, non-Ashbringer Tyrion.
How about that Jade guy?
That's not bad. Getting a 4/4 out there. It's like a Boulder Fist Ogre worth of stats for 4 mana. But
yeah, when you put it that way, it's actually a lot more insane than it seems at first glance. Still, though, Zalae is in a commanding position, picks up another way to consolidate the lead that he's got onto the long-term plan of this game. ShtanUdachi, if he picks up Aya Blackpaw, though, has got a real shot at just cleaning up.
Right, just getting too much Jade value for Zalae to handle. Also, like Jade Behemoth would be good, but he's out of like Primordial Drakes, which oftentimes are the cards that help you stabilize in this point. Both of those had to be expended just to kind of keep up with the early game here from Zalae. So ShtanUdachi is in trouble.
Zalae now trying to figure out if he wants to buff the 1 minion or if he wants to buff the 2/3. I think just sticking to one big guy to take your...
Right, and then just use it to maybe get through the Tar Creeper, not respect the second swipe. And so this way you get to go face with Tyrion, and you kill him faster. And that's really important against Jade Druid because you play around, so you disrespect the second swipe, but you play around every Jade card in his deck because the Jade cards are what's going to allow him to come back in the game.
That's no Jade card.
Right.
There is a Gluttonous Ooze though in ShtanUdachi's deck, you know, so if he picks it up next turn, I think he's able to
Does he have to play the gadget just to not die?
Yeah. Oh yeah, by far. So this is still, he's still in the game with Gluttonous Ooze, gets 5 armor, and then if he picks up a Jade Behemoth off the draw, that could actually just tilt the game in his favor. Even though it seems like he's so far behind, there's no catch-up. It can still happen.
Now Zalae can go all face, and if ShtanUdachi does not get a taunt or that Gluttonous Ooze or heal, he's dead. Or he could still try and control the board. I think he'd probably kill Gadget.
Yeah.
But they could hit a minion. You set up lethal for any minion except Jade Behemoth. It's close.
Earthen Scales would kind of crush you. They're like Earthen Scales into card draw. That would suck a little bit. But you've seen Feral Rages, and this
is much safer. Both Feral Rages have been used.
Okay. It's not Gluttonous Ooze, at least, but it's still a big enough wall that you're gonna start losing your value war. Zalae is gonna want that Stonehill Defender to come out and bail him out with anything good, really.
Right. He needs 1 more damage. Otherwise, he's going to be off a little bit. So he's off a little bit if Swipe comes out and clears this board. So, because he's only pushing 3 this turn. So he can't beat the hero power of ShtanUdachi in the following turn if the board happens to get cleared.
You could push 2, I guess, if you wanted to maximize your board presence. And get Stonehill, Defender, Tariq. I mean, you'd win with that anyway.
If you get in for the 2 this turn, taking the value trade with the 2/5, and then Swipe comes out, you still lose your board, though.
Yeah.
So you don't make it there.
Well, that Nourish is the draw ShtanUdachi probably wanted the most, but he's going to need a Swipe to make it happen.
He needs Innervate, too, though, because now he can't get the hero power in.
Uh-oh.
So he hit the Swipe, but it's not enough now.
Earthen Scales?
Earthen Scales could do it.
That is neither of the cards that he was wanting to get. And ShtanUdachi's going to lose to a matchup that, well, you know, you're going into this. Sure, you can edge them out with armor gain, but it's still a Murloc Paladin, and you're not very good at dealing with wide boards without your own white board, usually.
Yeah, that was really close, though. That could have went either way pretty quickly there. Just 1 Earthen Scales could have changed things. And we look at when the Sunkeeper got Kings, right? And ShtanUdachi had to respond to that with double Feral Rage. Maybe that was too rash of a response. Maybe you're supposed
to a good point.
Just develop into it and then save the Feral Rage for armor later on. Like, that's definitely one of the spots to look back at that game because that's a lot of armor being used. You're using Feral Rage for 4 damage instead of 8 armor. So, and you're still face tanking the minion either way, right? So there's definitely...
The thing is, when you've played your 2 Drakes... What I'm thinking, he was thinking, is even if I soften up, like if I armor up and I soften up the minion over a few turns with removal, I'm never killing it. So I think he just deemed that because getting 16 armor is like 3 turns of this guy hitting you in the face, right? If you look at it that way. So without Fandral, you're never really killing that guy. So he'd have to have had like a good Jade hand to get the job done early.
Right. I don't remember what Jade cards were in his hand at the time.
Oh, there was nothing at that point.
Oh, there was nothing?
It was all air, so...
Okay. Yeah. It's just sometimes Jade Druid gets a good opening, never hits the Nourish, has all air. It's got a good opening this game, but so does Pirate Warrior.
I mean, double upgrade doesn't seem like much on a 1-attack weapon, but I know better. I've learned it hurts.
Swinging for 3 every turn. Yeah, that clocks him pretty quick. And if you pick up a War Axe, that's just like the end of the game.
You're calling it early, but sure, let's make it that. That's a pretty good follow-up too, because I was gonna say like double upgrading on turn 2 feels sort of mediocre, to really put it mildly. Whereas now you can at least redevelop the hook on this and get yourself an extra. It's like it's a homemade muster for battle.
And you upgrade here because the next Jade that comes out is a 2/2. The first one came out was a 1/1, so you're expecting a 2/2 to be developed, and you don't want to trade in one of your minions into that. You just want to be able to use your weapon while developing the captain. So squeezing in the upgrade now allows you to answer this 2/2.
That Frothing Berserker is going to get value, because if Jade Spirit comes out, you just do whatever you want as Zalae, and you just get a crazy big minion. So every way I slice this, ShtanUdachi is going to need like 3 turns to clear this up.
Okay.
And
he doesn't
that's
got 3.
really ridiculous. He'd need the swipe right away, like off the draw we're talking about, and that's...
He can get Nourish for Crystals next turn and Wrath alongside it, hoping that like another Captain gets developed or some 3 health minion, so not Frothing. Then he can maybe make it happen there. Holy smokes.
What is that weapon? That's an abomination,
Yeti.
man. This is this is so ridiculous. It's a Death Bite rotated out.
Holy crap. He's got 16 damage on the weapon alone.
It's a rare case of...
You have to try and make it to this Primordial Drake, I think.
Yeah. I don't see how you're stopping this lethal anyway. I mean, otherwise, right? So you need to get the Wrath for the setup on the Bloodcell Cultist, and then you can Primordial Drake.
And then Frothing is going to ruin your dreams, but you try. You try. He's not going to set it up on the Cultist. He's going to just try and maximize the damage. There's 5 on board, 4 from the weapon. So the only 1 card that kills you is Leroy in this situation. So he doesn't play around any additional outs, besides like 2 card combinations.
I wonder what the idea was. What is he digging for? Maybe an Earthen Scales? Or like another Drake? Just trying to get a double Drake to kill a Cultist over 2 turns? Okay. I could see that. I could see like double Drake being the way he's trying to play this game out.
He's got a lot of healing. Doesn't quite answer any of the board though. He could kill the Frothing and get the armor. But yeah, it's a little bit awkward now because the Drake doesn't kill the Cultist. He looks dead.
If you go for the full, as you said, you know, the armor gain for 8, and that Drake sticks, because it's not dead on board right now, right?
There is 8 damage on board.
Yeah, yeah. You know.
But yeah. And
he's dead to Leroy still.
He's dead to that. No, he's not. He's alive at 1. He's alive at 1. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Correct.
How about that, Cultist?
Well, the Drake doesn't die on board cleanly, so technically speaking, the Drake keeps him alive. If he picks up Earthen Scales, maybe there's a comeback here.
It really needed the Earthen Scales, though, because otherwise the weapon plus the Corcron kills the Drake.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The 3-2 gets to connect for the lethal. So Zalae's Pirate Warrior is going to do what Pirate Warrior does. Get the South Sea Captain out with a bunch of 1/1s and win the game.
Yeah, South Sea Captain is an insanely powerful card. In the early days of Pirate Warrior, back when they were kind of figuring out the list, there were no South Sea Captains in it. And today in modern Pirate Warrior, and for the last couple of months, it's been rocking 2 South Sea Captains, and it's one of the highest win rate cards in the entire deck, which is actually insane how we totally missed that for like first 3 or 4 months of Pirate Warrior. No one was playing South Sea Captain. Turns out it's one of the best cards in the deck.
The funny thing too is that people played it initially and then cut it out.
Right.
And the refined quote-unquote Pirate Warrior deck said, "No, I don't want that," and then eventually reverted back to it. But we spoke about this Flappy Bird earlier. This little flappy, innervatable 3/3 that needs to be killed. Zalae picked it up as the aggro Druid up against Jade. And if there is no removal to answer it, you're just golden. So,
yeah, you could play it alongside the Enchanted Raven this turn if you wanted to. You could also hold on it and try and develop a situation where it's more likely to stick.
Well, I mean, it dies to what? Only Wrath in that spot, right? Oh, Foul Rage. Never mind. There was a Jade Blossom played. So, yeah, you're looking at about 4 cards. He's drawing about 6. Yeah, the odds are good that he's got 1 of those in the hand by the next draw.
If you go Innervate Jade Blossom, a lot of times you're setting up for what as the Jade Druid? A lot of times it's Tar Creeper, right?
It's a Tar Creeper, but
there's Feral Rage and Tar Creeper and
second Jade Blossom.
Or second Jade Blossom all at 3. So if Tar Creeper comes out, then your bird gets kind of shut down anyway.
Yeah.
And you don't just Innervate Jade Blossom with no follow-up. That's weird. It's a play to extend your mana and to do something a lot of the time. So players will often like really tank on that, and that's why Zalae is choosing not to go with the flappy pink bird here.
That's interesting.
This puts more stats on the table immediately. Now the Wrath's out of the way. Now you play the bird, and then the game's over. That's why the card's so powerful, even without Innervate, just because your opponent has to use their removal on your deck. Oh, the Ooze pickup, though.
Yeah, it's going to require the Direwolf Alpha to be the play here for Zalae, probably, instead of the Vicious Fledgling. He could pick up another 1-drop. There's a bunch of them in the deck. I mean...
Okay, he's got another 1-drop to play out alongside now. But that's a super powerful Jade Druid curve. Oftentimes, Jade Druid does not outcurve aggro Druid.
And this is one of those rare exceptions where the Jade Druid was on the board turn 1 with the Jade Blossom, and then followed with the Jade Spirit on turn 4. It's effectively a Chillwind Yeti in this spot.
Mm-hmm. And Wild Growth does absolutely nothing for ShtanUdachi. He needs minions to play. He's going to slowly start falling behind if he doesn't find stuff soon.
Well, at least Zalae found a way to deal with that 2-3 that does not involve just hero powering. So he's going to stay on the board removal plan for the time being. And
eventually the Jade Druid has to, miss one of their drops because he played 2 Innervates this game. He's completely out of cards. Unless he draws Nourish on exactly 5 like this. They will run out of cards, and then you can just drop the Vicious Fledgling behind it. Anyway, that's his game plan. And it's not working out for him.
I like how every single... Oh, that's a good card against Jade, though. That Bitter Tide right there. We're talking about Nourish on 5, but Bitter Tide on 5 is also pretty sweet if you're the aggro player, because you're oftentimes forcing them to respond here with Jade Behemoth or a Swipe Hero Power. It's like one of the 2 plays that really feel good if you're a ShtanUdachi. And then that 8-8 just does wonders.
And ShtanUdachi did not get a lot of gas. He's still fairly empty-handed because of the 2 Earthen Skills, which... healing is great, but after you've stabilized the board, and he has not stabilized the board yet.
He does have the Drake for next turn, though. That's a really sweet card to have. And Zalae, though, with the Mark of his Charge, does find himself an extra card draw since the Bittertide Hydra is a beast and will generate the draw off of the effect. A 10-10 is a big thing to handle if you're ShtanUdachi, though, regardless of how you spin this. You're going to have to throw a ton of resources into it.
Mm-hmm. 10-10s are big. They hurt too. Okay.
Probably not the best roar getting this game, but we pick up Bloodcell Corsair.
Violet Teacher. Okay. These are some late game tech cards. I guess it's trying to improve this matchup in particular by just having more mid-rangey threats.
Yeah, it's one of those things we talked about that with Zalae. We're discussing the builds of Aggro Druid and how Violet Teacher was cut out of a lot of people's lists.
Right, because it's too slow against the other aggro decks.
Exactly, and this is the thing that we came to a conclusion to, is that the card is amazing in general, right? To use Power of the Wild, Mark of the Lotus, and everything. But the issue is that other aggro decks just run you over.
Mm-hmm. Because you have to use those cards early to win the board. And then the teacher's just dead after that. So, but it works out against decks where you don't have to really use those cards early, which is Jade Druid a lot of the time. Not this time, but a lot of the time they don't press on the board so quickly.
Do you Mark the Lotus this one guy to play around Wrath?
Yeah.
Now it's not going to work out. It's too late, so, we're talking in the air, but would you have done it?
You've already seen one Wrath. He's not even halfway through his deck. I think you're going to need more value out of the card in general, so I don't think you can play so scared in this position.
Okay.
So I support not using it.
You're only getting punished by like Wrath plus Jade Behemoth, Wrath plus Blackpaw, Jade Spirit number 2. So you'd be punished by Jade Development with 2 minions and Wrath, which is very specific.
He needs living mana yesterday for him to win this game, or last turn, That's one of the things also to consider, is the value of Mark of the Lotus is so high, because if you do hit living mana, you kind of just win the game, because you can go living mana. It consumes 7 of your mana because that's the board space available. You have 1 mana left over, you play Mark of the Lotus, then they're done. So, but Jade Druid not able to pick up a win there. Aggro Druid, I'm sorry, not able to pick up a win there against Jade Druid. So ShtanUdachi's on the board. 2-1 for Zalae still. He's going to be playing that Aggro Druid again, trying to find a win against either the Paladin or the Rogue.
I don't think it's going to struggle too much against Paladin. You know, we saw the Hungry Crabs, and there's the Bloodsail Raiders in there that help a little bit with the matchup. But overall, it's the fact that he's just faster, usually, than the average mid-range Murloc Paladin. So it's going to come down to whether or not Stan gets like the perfect consec on 4.
Yeah, you almost always win the board as the aggro Druid because you run more 1-drops than your opponent. You know, ShtanUdachi's running 2 1-drops, you're running 8. So you hit the table running, and your cards are just more efficient in the early game than his are. Not even to mention that 2 of your 1-drops are Hungry Crabs, which all of ShtanUdachi's early game is Murlocs, so you just get free trades left and right.
Yeah, and we saw Zalae here mulligan away the Firefly, which is a pretty decent 1-drop usually, but in this case, digging for that Hungry Crab as hard as he possibly can, because that's almost an auto win when you land it on curve against a coined out Murloc. And this is exactly what happened. And just look at the board state right now. 4 minions on the board on turn 2, going into Savage Roars, got living mana for the refill. This is looking dire for ShtanUdachi.
And to go back to the Firefly point, like, Enchanted Raven's a better 1-drop than Firefly is. Hungry Crab's the better 1-drop, and Bloodsail Corsair is. So you have 6 better 1-drops right there than the Firefly. So I think you almost always pitch it just looking for your more aggressive cards that are suited for the matchup.
Yep. Seems about right. And Zalae finds an even better card than Savage Roar to play in this spot.
Yeah, you can play around Consecrate this way as well.
Yep. So you can trade away your patches with your hero power to keep all your guys at 3 health and more. And there's very little that punishes you in a Paladin deck unless it's the Wild Power version, again, with the equality shenanigans we talked about. And he's going to opt to keep as much on the board.
He wants to set up lethal next turn with the Roar. So you can't fault him for that. If ShtanUdachi doesn't have Consecrate, he wins the game. And if ShtanUdachi does have Consecrate, he still has 7 power in play.
I mean, how do you even die the board on turn 3?
Oh wait, he can't even Consecrate. He doesn't have.
No, on turn 4, on turn 3 he can't. That's the thing. It's like you only get punished by like Wild Power Secret, into a consec.
And he's just dead. Yeah, he's just dead every time. Dude. So yeah, you obviously take the value trade. They're only on 3 mana. I was looking at the Druid board. I was like, oh yeah, Paladin must be on 4 mana. That just makes sense. Otherwise, how
look at those 4 minions with
right, like,
with 17 health and infinite attack. Seems about like turn 4 to me. Never mind. ShtanUdachi's already out of the Skype call, so farewell to you, my friend. Zalae takes it with the aggro lineup again, farming ShtanUdachi. It seems like ShtanUdachi just keeps keeling over whenever he faces off against aggro. Yeah,
it's just unfortunate for him that he brought such a slow lineup to. Like he's got like a slow mid-range lineup, and he brought it to such an aggressive field. You know, there's so many players bringing this aggro, just shutting it down. He's kind of running a more outdated lineup, not up to date with what the metagame has evolved into, and it's really punishing him.
Yeah, and we'll be taking a short break before we move on to the next match, which is going to be the last match of the day. A 5 to 7 minute break is in order. We'll be right back, guys. Stay tuned. Don't go anywhere.